Hey everybody, how you doing?
Hello, how are you?
I can't complain, you know. Here in the glorious world of
Hey,
my basement.
Oh, is that your basement? That's a cool setup.
Yeah, it's my little studio that I do editing and a little bit of music production and stuff like that in
How long have you had that set up for?
forever.
Oh, really? Cool.
Yeah, this has been a long work in progress. Some of those keyboards back there, the one on the top I got when I was my first keyboard I bought when I was like 18 years old. So I'm kind of
Wow.
hanging on to some of them. Don't use it as much, more sentimental value, but it's always fun to have around. So how's everybody doing? Everybody ready for another exciting day of film
of
production?
course.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so we got a lot to talk about today. So we're going to get into it. So first off, I just want to make sure we're all cool with last class about how to use those modes for that first assignment, the still function modes. Remember, those three modes you can use, actually four, I take it back. You're going to aperture priority, shutter priority, manual mode, or really P mode if you have to. Yeah, so if anybody's any questions on it, just hit me up later or pop into the discussion group, and I'll check the discussion groups probably later tonight after we're done with class.
I forgot the due date and I didn't see it on the canvas. When is that due again?
Let me take a look. Good question.
I believe it's the 26th. It should be the 26th.
I thought it was the 26th, but
it is due on the 26th. Yep, midnight on the 26th is when it's due. So got about 10 days. That should be more than enough time to get that done. We're going to keep all our assignments padded, so there's plenty of time to do them, so you don't have to get all worried. But we will, once we start getting into the projects, they will have pad in them, but they're going to require a lot of work. So you definitely want to get your skill managing, time management skills really down to a science. So you're going to need them, especially at the end. All right. So if everybody's good, right? No questions about last class. We will jump back into talking about working with still cameras probably next class. But today we need to move on to more bigger fish to fry, more important subjects to talk about. And today we're going to talk about sequencing, framing, and blocking. So today we're going to talk about sequencing, framing, and blocking. Anybody have an idea what that means? What any of those things mean?
I feel like sequencing is the order of which it goes. The framing is the angle of when it's shot. The blocking was the question I wanted to know more about. So that one I wouldn't know.
Okay, yeah, you're on the right track.
blocking is where you put people or maybe things. I don't know if that's
Yeah,
well. Okay.
That's all part of it. Let's step back to the big picture here. And what's the average run length of a motion picture? Anybody know?
Around 2 hours.
Is it 145?
About 145, 130 to 145, hour and a half to hour and 45 minutes. How many scenes do you think are in that average?
Oh, geez.
Like 75.
15, 30.
Maybe like 75 to 100, depending on the pacing and everything. And then how many shots do you think are in each one of those scenes?
200.
That's a lot. That's a lot, but well, let's say average, maybe let's say 10, 15, just for the sake of argument. That's a lot of stuff, right? So how the heck do you tackle this thing called a feature film, right? And we can translate and water this down to, short films and music videos or podcasts, whatever you want, however you want to define this. But you have this big thing that you have to tackle. Can you just look at the big picture and be like, all right, I got it? No, it's going to be overwhelming, right? Like imagine anybody here climb Mount Everest?
No, thank you.
Not yet. If you climb a mountain, there's this saying, you always want to look for the top, the peak, right? That's the finish line. but you really have to look down at your feet and look at where you're at, because if you just focus on the top of the mountain, you could either feel like that it's an unaccomplishable task. It's impossible to cover. So mountain climbing and filmmaking have a lot of similarities. So both are these big goals that we're trying to achieve, but I need to get through the day. I need to get through every day. And if I can take this one step at a time, one step upwards or one shot at a time, I can get this thing done. And that's how you have to think about it. You can't think about, and that's where a lot of people fail in the beginning. They get so caught up on this idea of, oh my God, I can't do a motion picture feature. It's too much. How do I can't even think about that. And that's where they fail, because they think about it. And that doesn't mean you're not going to be prepared. You're not going to go through pre-production and all that stuff that we're going to talk about down the road. But once that's all figured out, I need to just focus on what's in front of me and get it done. And that's the only way to achieve. So what we really need to do is kind of break down a movie into its essence. What's its DNA, or even better word, what are the atoms that make up a movie? And think of it that way, because the whole way of producing a movie and shooting a movie is going to rely upon breaking these things down into their basic elements. And if you can't do that, then you're going to fail. And this theory, this concept that I'm going to talk about today, applies to anything you do in production, whether you're making your short films, your class projects, your YouTube channel, your short music videos, whatever. It doesn't really matter. That's the beauty of this whole thing about filmmaking, is it's scalable. What we're talking about here, what we actually do in the classroom, scales up to big major motion pictures. It's all the same. So once you understand the theory in your head, then the idea of maybe making an hour-and-a-half long feature film is not that far-fetched. Now, granted, you still need the money, you still need all that stuff, but the ability to do it, not as far off. Everybody, once they learn these ideas, who's determined, can do it. Make sense? So let's take a look at this thing called sequencing first. How do you break down the complicated structure of a film? So in a nutshell, a film is composed of large blocks of storytelling that can be broken down into smaller and smaller blocks until you can no longer reduce it down any further. Again, think of the idea of atoms, right? I have things that, everything's made of atoms, but if I break all these natural elements in the world down, or things or people, whatever, I get down to something that's the bottom of the base. Same thing applies in filmmaking. The components of a movie will start from a basic element. Anybody guess what that element is?
Writing?
Nope. Even more. Reduce it down even further.
An idea?
Nope. Let's be not so abstract. Think in terms of production. What can I break a movie down into?
Budget?
Say again?
Budget?
Nope. Someone's got it. I'll take one more guess.
Oh, genre?
No. Oh, almost. Shots.
Oh, man.
Yeah, right. Everybody was thinking too more abstract, too more. No, shots and takes. So when I reduce everything down, if I take any motion picture and break it down, we're not talking about script, we're not talking about ideas and all that. We're talking about the movie. Even if you just look at it on the screen or on your camera, on your TV set, the smallest piece of a film is a shot and a take. That's the smallest thing we're going to reduce this thing down to. So after the story is written, when you're writing the story, you're writing the script, you're not thinking about this stuff. You can be thinking about shots a little bit, but you're really focused on the story. But once we shift into gears into production, this is the thing that we're going to reduce it down. This is where we're going to break it down to its bare minimum. And that bare minimum is shots and takes. And so this is how we're going to keep track of everything. This is how we know we're going to be able to make an hour-and-a-half long movie and get done, because we're going to reduce it down to here. So when I take shots and takes, if I combine them together, I get a scene, right? So scenes are composed of shots and takes. When I combine the scene together, they come together to form a sequence. When I form sequences together, they finally combine together to tell the whole story or the whole film. So starting to see a pattern here. So take to shot to scene to sequence and finally the film. So if this is the finished product, when I reverse engineer it, I'm going to turn it, I'm going to chop it up into sequences. I'm going to chop the sequences up into scenes. Scenes are going to be chopped up into shots, and then shots themselves going to be chopped up into takes. So the whole process revolves around making takes, right? Again, let's look at it visually. Here's my film. I'm going to break it up into 2 sequences. So now 2 sequences equal the film. I'm going to break those up into scenes. Each scene is going to take up 2 scenes, right? I'm going to break those scenes up into shots, and then each one of those shots eventually is going to be takes. So when I'm out there in the trenches of battle, trying to fight the war of the budget and the schedule and making my day, I can't look at this. I can't look at it here. I can look at it here. I certainly will look at it here, but the actual marching that happens on day-to-day level is here, down here in the takes. So as my day progresses, I'm just concerned about takes. How many of these I need to get one of these? How many of these do I need to get one of these? And eventually I'll get to this and this, but I don't even think these 2 levels, to be honest with you. When I'm in production, the most I'm thinking about are scenes. I can't think about the sequence, and I can't think about the film. And that doesn't mean I don't. It just means when you're in the field, in there working, we have to reduce everything down because and I know I'm sounding very simplifying this thing, and it is more complicated than this. It is more. I do have to make sure my scenes connect together. I'm making a sequence. I got to make sure all the scenes work in the sequence to get to that done. But when we get down to the nitty gritty, okay, we're working the scene, we're actually getting down to the shot, working the shot. So it's like, we may look at the day and say, okay, we're going to shoot a sequence today. And that sequence has 3 scenes. And in that scene, each one of those 3 scenes is going to have 8 to 10 shots. That's our game plan for the day. But when we start working and setting up in those shots, I really got to be focused on the shots. I know I need to look ahead to the scene, but I want to stay in the shot because that's where the attention to detail is. I can't be thinking about the whole flow of the film. I will at some point, and I certainly am thinking about the whole flow and thinking about the big picture of everything in pre-production in the beginning when I'm planning out my schedule and planning everything out. But once I do all that planning, I'm down here in the trenches working shots and trying to keep it going. And so if I know today we're going to shoot, say 3 scenes times, let's say 3 scenes times 10, so it's 30 shots. And knock 30 shots out today. Probably might even do more. And each shot's going to have 5 takes, maybe 3 to 5 takes. That's like 100 shots that I got to do, 100 things I got to shoot. And if I look at the day like that, and I can look at the beginning and say, oh, that's how many I got to do. But if I think about that all day long, it's going to prevent me from really focusing on what I'm trying to do. So the game plan here is understanding, for a way to process it when you're in your head, how you can break down a film into its DNA, its atoms of takes and shots. But B, that's the first thing I want to do. And the second thing I'm going to do is be able to track all this stuff. You need to track it. And that's the one big thing that beginners and amateurs may not do that all professionals do, or they should be doing. Right. So every day is based off this idea of a setup. Anybody take a guess what a setup is?
The setup, I'm assuming, is what the shot or the take you want to make is. That is what you're gonna set up, right? Like you're getting it ready before you shoot it.
You're very, very close. It's pretty much that. Each time we position the camera, it's considered a setup. So if I've got tripod here, right? And I'm going to shoot a scene. The minute I put that down, set in and say, okay, we're shooting from here, that's called a setup. And if I shoot this angle, let's say I've got someone here talking and it's me addressing you guys, and I want to shoot over my shoulder at you guys here. That's one setup. Then I'm like, okay, well, we need another angle. So, okay, great, let's get the reversal. So now I'm gonna put my tripod over here and shoot back at me. So that's two setups, right? So anytime I move the camera, I reposition the camera, it's considered a setup. And this is a very, very important thing to consider. I can be at that position and I can shoot multiple takes. Or I could be at that position and do another shot. So let's say, for example, I put the tripod back here and I go, all right, let's put a camera on here. Let's get a wide shot showing the whole setup, right? The whole scene. And we shoot that scene. And then the director calls for, all right, let's just keep the camera where it's at. And let's put a longer lens on. And now let's get a close up of my computer laptop and see all your smiling faces there, or whoever, most of you who have put your camera on, or some of you. Is that a new setup, or is that the same setup?
The same setup.
Exactly. So why do you think we care about setups versus shots? And when I say why do we care about it, think more in the terms of production, scheduling.
Because it's a starting point.
Possibly, but
you
what
have similar
ahead.
shots, you can do them all in one.
Right? And how do you think that affects schedule? So right now, why do we care about setups during scheduling and production?
Because every time you have to change the camera position, it takes time.
Yeah, bingo. You won the $1 million prize for today. Free Zoom for the rest of your life.
Oh boy.
Yeah, right. Yay. So when we create the schedule, we talk about setups. How many setups can you pull off in a day? Because if I say, well, I can set this up here and I can put two different lenses on here and get two different angles, that's a lot quicker than moving the camera around and resetting up. And so the thing you want to think about in setups, like right now, what I just did, that's no big deal, right? I just moved the tripod and I put it over here and did something, right? But in a real production, it's not just the camera. It's lighting, it's blocking, it's the actors, it's everything. So if I want to shoot out this way, I'm probably lit this way. And so if I flip the camera on the other side and shoot this way, I'm probably not lit, which means I have to rearrange everything. And also maybe all my gear, let's say I'm in this room, right? And I don't have much room to work. And I have put all my camera cases and stuff over here. If I just suddenly jump this side and shoot this way, I got to move all that stuff around and then shoot. And then so setups, knowing how many setups I can do, and some setups are going to be simple. Some setups are going to be incredibly complicated. So if I'm just have a tripod here and I'm changing lenses and moving around, that's a fairly fast setup. But if I've got dolly track and I'm setting a big Fisher dolly up, and that's a longer setup. So it may take me 45 minutes to set up a dolly shot. So when production talks with the camera department, the DP and the director, and says, okay, how many setups are you doing? How many setups can you pull off? And what type of setups are you doing? This is valuable information to understand exactly how many we can do a day based on the schedule. So if you say, well, we're going to shoot everything on the dolly, okay, how many setups do we need to shoot a day? Well, based off the schedule, based off of how much time we have, and we're going to talk about scheduling more probably next week. I don't have free run. I don't have eternity. Even the biggest multi-million-dollar, $40 million blockbuster tentpole franchise from Marvel has a fixed schedule. They have a certain time they got to be shooting, start and finish and wrap out. And there's multiple things that take into consideration, everything from actor availability, how much they're paying the crew per day, what locations they have access to, where they need to be from one point to the other. When is their release? Is it Christmas time? And are we shooting in the summertime and we got to deliver in Christmas? So the schedule is this thing, no matter how much money you have, exists and has deadlines, and you can't go past the schedule. If you do, well, you're going to cost somebody money. And also you're probably not going to work again because nobody wants to go over schedule. Not one producer I know loves going over schedule. Haven't met one yet. So understanding how to break down your movie into these basic components is stage one of going, okay, well, how am I going to schedule this thing? How many shots do I know? So if I know I've got a day that I've got nothing but tripod stuff, or even better, if I got a day where I'm just shooting the whole thing on handheld, I probably can get through a lot of setups really quickly. And so I might say, okay, well, today I know I can do 15 setups, which is a lot because we're going handheld. But tomorrow we have the dolly. So in those scenes, I'm only going to be able to pull off 5 setups that day. So understanding this idea of every time we move the camera around as a setup is the foundation for understanding what our schedule is going to be like, what we can actually accomplish that day, and B, a way of determining how much time we're going to take. Because it's not just saying, well, every setup takes 30 minutes or 20 minutes. There's a lot more more things to figure out based on how complicated the shot is. But I can have an understanding of what that is. And so this is the key to being really good at producing or being good at directing, because you need to understand how long it takes for things to happen. If you just say, well, I'm going to use the dolly and I know I can get this all done, but you don't have it figured out, logically mapped out, you're not going to make your schedule, and then you're going to have problems. So setups are important. So each time we put it up, it's a setup. Anytime the camera is moved, it's considered a setup. So we position the camera, it's a setup. Anytime we move, it's considered a setup. So the next thing is shot and take. So what a shot is a continuously view filmed by one camera without interruption. This is very, very important to understand. So that means if I put the camera here and we're like, all right, here we go, we're going to roll our first shot, and roll camera, action. Cut. We just made a take of one shot, right? So if I do this, okay, here we go. Stand by, roll camera, and action. Something happens. Scene ends. All right, keep rolling, keep rolling. Let's do it again. Hurry, come back, and action. Let's go again. And cut. And we finally cut camera. I've got 3 takes in there that are all in 3 shots, basically. They're all in one take. Would that be a problem, do you think?
Maybe for the editing department, but outside of time, no, I don't think so.
No, it's a huge problem. And this is like #1 mistake that everybody makes. What we're doing here is we're reducing down the film into its molecules, its atoms, right? So each take is an atom. So if I just roll nonstop, and there are certain productions that do this, specifically documentary and definitely reality TV, then I can't really organize that stuff properly. And like you said, I could take those shots, take it all and bring it into Avid, post, and have the editors deal with it. But I'm breaking the chain of communication. I'm breaking the tracking and all the stuff that we're going to learn about today, part of today, that is important to track this stuff. So if we've got, again, we go back to the big picture, an hour and a half, let's say, of shots, and we figure out it's, let's say it's 1,500. Let's even go a higher number. Let's say it's 3,000 takes to get that. Wouldn't it be better to track that stuff once you're creating it than have someone sit there and go back and try to find those and tag them and log them and do everything in post? Doesn't that sound like that'd be more efficient? And if you're efficient, what does that usually mean?
You work faster, wasting less time.
Yeah, and what does that really mean?
You're on schedule.
Even more importantly, what does it mean? Even more.
Budget is not being over.
I'm saving money. Time is money, right? If I have to pay an editor 2 weeks to go through everything before editorial starts, I just spent that money for no reason. Make sense? Now there are exceptions, like I said, reality TV, they don't cut. We can't cut because if if the Real Housewives of Orange County are fighting with each other and getting mad at each other for cat memes or something like that, you're not going to stop it. You're just going to let it go. And so, but the thing is, that's part of the budget. That's someone's already being paid to go and log that stuff and chop it up and break it up. But in a film, in a narrative film, we're going to separate shots. So anytime we end the shot, unless there's some emergency thing that happens, we're going to cut camera. Even if it means cutting and immediately going again, because it's going to make a physical separate take that is easy to track. I don't have to worry about someone breaking it up. I don't have to worry about later on what if because when they chop it up, they're doing it in the editor. What if the editor gets corrupted? What if something, that data gets lost? If I do it up front, it's all broken up, and it's going to have much more impact on a cascade of events down the road. So, but the one thing I'm going to tell you is that's the thing you got to get caught in your head when you start shooting, even on the projects in this class. The understanding of shots and takes and how important it is to cut between shots. If you just let the camera roll, you're A, setting up bad habits for yourself, and B, you're going to make life miserable for not just yourself, but the editors and a bunch of other people when you go try and find these shots. So, and we'll get into it a little bit further when we talk about continuity and scripting and stuff like that. So going back to this whole idea, a shot is a continuous view filmed by one camera without interruption. If additional shots from the same setup are required, so remember, we set the camera up, we say we just put it on sticks here. I'm going to do a shot. If we're not happy for some reason, whether maybe the camera had a mistake, what if the focus was off? What if the performance was wrong? The actor flubbed the line. What if the director wasn't happy with it? If we do it again, it's called a take. If you just do a one shot, one take world, you do one shot, you're done, man. You just made one shot, that's it. But that doesn't usually happen. Usually we do it again a couple times. And so every time you redo it, it's called a take. Now, all this information is going to be tracked someplace. And if anybody's kind of smart and can leapfrog ahead, what do you think we use to track all this?
A slate?
Yes, the slate, exactly. So everybody's thought that was just cool that you go and roll sound, click, and do it in front of the camera. No, that slate is one of the most important tools in our filmmaking arsenal. That's how we're going to track everything. That's how we're going to know a good take from a bad take. That's how we're going to know what shot we're on, what setup, what scene we're in, where we are in the movie. And because it's visually captured on the camera, guess who else knows exactly what we're doing? The editor, right? So if I just hand them a bunch of cards and say, here you go, man, here's all the footage, and there's no slates in there, there's no markings, no nothing, what do you think is going to happen?
They have to watch all of it, all to find it all, right?
And how do they know exactly which actually belongs where? How do they know which shot the director says, circle that take, that's the one I want to use? Can you see how inefficient that is? So, and we will talk a lot about slates coming up, how to use them, the proper technique, all this good stuff about it. But if I don't reduce the movie down to takes and shots and track it, I have no way of knowing what's good, what's bad, without someone going through it. And that usually means that editor, it won't be an editor, it'll be an assistant editor. Does that assistant editor actually know what shots are good or bad? Were they on set? No. Who was on? So that means the director has to get involved now and help deal with it. So you could start seeing how this is going to start making a complicated mess if you don't break everything down into these shots and takes, right? Everybody with me so far?
Yeah. Is there a way to on the camera to name those?
There is, but unfortunately, in this world, no. No. So in the professional world, bigger cameras, professional cameras, like for example, my Red camera can sync wirelessly to my iPad, and I can, in someone's job, it is to program the numbers into the file. But what I will tell you is that in the end, it's much more reliable and faster and easier just to use the slate. So it doesn't matter how fancy and high tech the cameras are, 99% of every production, they use a slate. or some form of a slate, whether it's a traditional slate, a smart slate, or they're using an iPad that's running slate software on it. I've yet to be on a set, especially a narrative set, where nobody uses a slate. Even in reality TV, they're slating the scene. They're marking it somehow. Somehow everything's being marked. And we'll get to that in a little bit, why, how to do that, and how it's going to help you in the edit. So the other thing too, if the camera is moved, if the lens changes or different action is filmed, it's a new shot. And this is the one thing that's hard for everyone to wrap their heads around in the beginning. Now, somebody said they also use it for matching the sound with the shot. Yeah, that's absolutely true. But that's more of a backup way of doing it. We'll talk about that in a little bit. So if the camera's moved, it's a new shot. We change lens and we keep the camera on the tripod, we change lens. It's a new shot. If the actors do something different, it's a new shot. So the way to think about this is a shot is this continuous view of something, right? The minute I make any alterations to it, it becomes a new shot. If I just redo it again because somebody messed up, it's just a take. It's the same shot, but a different take. But if I change lens, the actors do something different. Even if I just move it over a little bit like that, theoretically, and especially if you have like an AC who's really on it, they'll be like, nope, that's a new take. I'm sorry, no, that's a new shot. We're going to make a new shot. So it's a way of separating everything. How is that important? When I go into edit, if I can see, oh, this is shot 21 and it's got 10 takes, I'm like, all right, it's the same exact shot, just 10 times. But if I go in, oh, there's shot 22, even if it looks like the same shot, it's something's different about it. And so that means it's different. I need to pay attention to it. So this whole thing this idea of breaking the film down into its essential components is related to tracking everything through the pipeline. And the pipeline is from production, from pre-production through production and through post. So each shot can have a take, multiple retakes if it has technical or dramatic mistakes. And again, there's a way to track this and mark this, and I'm going to show you the proper technique for doing it with a slate, so you know exactly how to do it correctly. That's industry standard procedure, and not just, oh, I'm just making up my own thing.
Yeah, I wanted to say, so it says different action is filmed. It's a new shot. So like, let's say the first version, an actor walks in and talks to his friend, and then the second version, actor walks in, picks something up, and talks to his friend, but the camera's in the same spot. It's still a new shot.
I think it depends if that picking up something's critical. If it's just actors doing busy work to kind of make themselves look a little bit different, we'd probably keep it as the same shot. But if they do something different with it, that's more than just talking like, hey, how's it going? Oh yeah, it's all cool, right? And they do that in the first take, and then the second take, it's like, hey, how's it going? Oh yeah, it's all cool. It's really the same thing. They just did this. But if the first take they'd pick up the phone, hey, what's up? Hang on a second. Hello. Yep. All right, hang on a second. Yeah, give me 1 minute. Okay. Yeah, I'll talk to you later. Bye. All right, let's do it. And then the second shot, there's no picking up the phone. You see how those would be two different shots. So it's kind of like there's no black and white, right or wrong here. It's all interpreted based on what the director and the script supervisor says, and that's kind of who usually has the last word on it. Sometimes the ACs and the camera might say, no, wait, we did this, so it's a little bit different. Let's mark it as a new shot. That can happen too. But everybody's usually on the same fence about stuff like that. All right, let's move on. So if I've got these takes, and remember, takes are repeats of shots. Once I get enough shots together, then I got a scene. So how do we define a scene? So a scene defines the place or setting where the action's happening. Borrowed from stage productions, anytime the camera is moved, it's considered another setup, but we could have multiple setups within a scene. So think of the scene as a location. So if I come into this room and shoot this whole don't ask me why someone would make a movie about this, but us doing a class today, right? I have a camera rolling and shooting all this, and we read and do retakes and all this stuff. The action that's happening in this room is a scene. Now, if I in this room, right, and this first part of the scene is okay. Let's say this is scene 1, right? I'm in the room here hanging out with you guys, and then I'm like, oh wait, I'll be right back. I got to put this away, and I leave the room, and now I'm in the hallway, right? And then I talk in the hallway to somebody else, and we shoot that. Is that the same scene, or is that a new scene?
I'd say it's a new scene.
Yeah, because we've gone into another location. So why do you think that's important?
I think it's important because like one of the things that it just hit me now that you said, because I never could distinguish the differences, but now thanks to this class I can. The shots, takes, and the scenes. What I used to think was a scene was if, like, let's say the camera's behind you and then there's a camera to the side of you, and then when it switches, I would think that that's a scene, but that's a shot. So I think it's
Yeah.
important because now you're in, like you said, something different is happening. First, in this scene, you're talking to us, and the next scene, you're in a new location talking to somebody else. So it completely changes everything. I think that's why it's important.
Right. So that's one part of it. The second part of it is, anybody look at scripts? Any narrative scripts? What are they broken down into?
Interior, exterior,
What are those things?
settings,
What is another name for setting?
the scene.
Yeah, scene. So here's where the blueprint of the movie starts coming into formation with the actual making of the movie. So if I have a script, and in that script I've got 10 locations, right? Those 10 locations turn into 10 scenes. And so now suddenly I can start breaking down this script and actually seeing what I got to do to make it. So if I know there's 10 locations, which translate to 10 scenes in my film, well, now I know I got 10 scenes I got to shoot, right? And then once I have 10 scenes, I'm like, okay, well, now I can break these down into coverage and make shots. And everybody starts seeing the theme here, a way how that's starting to interconnect. So now I can track it all. So this is where, like, scene numbers. So where do you think the scene number comes from? Would be the order that the scenes are in the script. So if scene 1 is me in my basement, scene 2 is me walking in the hallway, scene 3 is me back here, and then scene 4 is me going outside. Now suddenly we can see I've got 4 scenes I got to shoot. So the scene can be one shot. So when we talk about a scene in a movie, can a scene be one complete shot, just one shot covering a scene? Yes, it can. You know, we've all seen Birdman, and we've talked about some other movies like Victoria that are one scene shot for the whole movie. There's plenty of movies out there that have just one shot that does a whole scene. So a scene can be a whole series of shots, or it could be one shot. But what it is depicting, a complete continuous event. So if the scene is me interacting with you guys here, that one scene in here, that one event is one scene. So here's another question. So if I'm here, and this is scene 1, right? And I'm in this room, and I get up and I walk into the hallway and have a conversation with somebody, that's scene 2. When I come back in here, is it a new scene or is it the continuation of the old scene?
A new scene.
Yes. So locations can have multiple scenes in them. And so what's the difference between one scene, a location having 2 scenes? Well, if they're different times in the film. So maybe I'm here in the beginning of the movie. Maybe I come back at the end of the movie here. Those are 2 separate scenes, even though they're shot in the same location. That makes sense? And if you think about a lot of movies, they're done that way, right? Characters come back into scenes. So maybe if we're scheduling our movie, would it make sense to shoot all the scenes that are in one location all at once and not shoot them in chronological order? Something to think about, right? Possibly. I wonder if that saves money. Would it save money? Maybe.
Is that why a lot of television shows are the actors? I think I brought this up last time. The actors are they say how they're shot out of order, but except for Scandal is shot chronologically. But most shows are shot out of order because they're taking multiple scenes from different episodes or in that same day?
Yeah, every majority of productions are shot out of order, and we're going to talk about this in more detail next week. So I'm going to skip a little ahead from that. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Okay, so if I got it, so basically a scene is the place and the setting where the action happens, all this stuff. What's a sequence?
The order of it.
Now, a sequence is a series of shots or scenes. It should be scenes or shots complete in itself. So what does that mean? Well, let's say I have a scene where there's a chase scene. Let's say I've got two cars chasing each other, and they're, or I even better, let's say we go into a parking lot, like at the college, and we have a chase scene from someone being chased by somebody else, and they get out of their car, they run through campus, and they get inside a building. That outside stuff, that whole chase sequence is basically a series of scenes all about a chase, right? So they all fit together. So if you want to think of what a sequence is, it's a bunch of scenes and shots that kind of fit together. Like if we do this whole chase scene, and then we cut from that chase scene to somebody at home, like they're exhausted and they just got done being chased. That exhausting scene and maybe the couple scenes in the house before they go to bed are part of another sequence because they don't fit in with the chase scene. So when we start breaking down a movie, we're going to break it down in these big chunks that are sequences. And sometimes, depending on the type of movie, we may shoot all those sequences together. So what if I'm doing a whole, historical war movie, right? And I've got a whole battle on a battlefield that I have to shoot, and there's like 5 or 10 scenes in that sequence. I'm probably going to coordinate and shoot them all together, right? So it gets continuity, lighting, all that stuff is going to make it a little bit more of an order. But this also gives me a way of an editorial to break the movie down. So I might go to one editor, say, okay, you're going to work on the first battle scene. You're going to do the flashback scenes, and then you're going to do the wrap up scene. I can have 3 people working on different parts of the movie at once. And still, I can then take these big chunks of the movie and put them together in the edit and start making this thing that is a movie. So do editors sometimes just go from start to end and do the whole edit by themselves? Yeah, they do. But a lot of movies, they'll have multiple editors or a supervising editor working with other editors to put this all together. A great example of that is television. So episodic movies, TV shows that have spanned over, multiple episodes during the season, they don't have time to have one editor do that. So they have multiple editors all working together on different sequences or sometimes on different episodes themselves and putting this all together. And maybe there's one person in charge who's overseeing the whole process to make sure that the continuity, that the feel of the pacing and everything keeps constant from show to show to show. So this idea of sequences is important, for shooting, for structure in your movie, in your head when you're structuring your movie, and then also for post. Okay, so sequence, again, may occur in a single setting or in several settings. So it's not really about how many scenes you need to equal sequence. It's not like there's a certain amount. It could be one. One scene could be a sequence. 5 scenes could be a sequence. 20 scenes could be a sequence, but that's probably stretching it. It's all about what's going on. If they all connect together as more of a narrative theme for those scenes. So in these sequences, action should match wherever it continues across several consecutive shots with straight cuts so that it depicts the event in a continuous manner. So what the heck does that mean? Well, let's go back to the chase scene. If I'm doing a chase scene with somebody and I've got multiple scenes that are put together in a sequence, if I got characters starting in one scene going from left to right across the frame, they should keep going left to right or come straight at me. I shouldn't have one scene where they go left to right and then cut to the next one and they're going right to left. So it might feel weird, like what direction they're coming from. And I'm not saying that doesn't happen, because it does happen in editing. And sometimes it's done intentionally to confuse the audience. Sometimes it's done because that's all they got to work with. But we take that into consideration, that trying to match action as much as possible. And again, we'll talk about this stuff in more detail coming up. And then finally, once I get these sequences done, now I've got my final film. I'm going to take the combination of sequences, put them together in the right order, and boom, I've got my story. So sometimes in the edit, sequences get interchanged. Maybe the script says this is what we're supposed to do, but then when we get in the edit, we're like, wow, you know what? What if we take that one sequence and flip it with this other sequence? That might make this more compelling of a narrative. And sometimes that happens. So the point I'm trying to bring across here is that the script is the blueprint. That's where we get that's the initial idea. That's the game plan. And then we usually use that blueprint to shoot. And then once we're in the edit, they're going to try and use that blueprint to recreate, build the bricks of the house, right? Like I said. But sometimes I may deviate from that blueprint when I see a better way to do something. And that doesn't mean that you should never do that because, whoa, that's what the writer wrote. Well, you got to stick to it. It just all depends. Sometimes you find things in the edit. And so what you want to think about in film production, and again, it could be whatever it is, your own videos, doesn't matter, it's all the same, that this is more about a journey and not just a set locked pattern that you're trying to accomplish. You may start with something, and a lot of you will in your first couple projects, start with what you think you have. And then when you get to the edit and look back, you're going to have something that might be different than what you started with because the process of making it causes it to change. And that's the cool thing about filmmaking. You can have it just follow the script and lock it dry, and lots of productions do that. But some directors, the journey helps shape the final product. David Lynch is one of those directors. He considers the whole process part of the story writing. He'll get a script, but on the fly, things will change. And then in the edit, things will change. And eventually his film is done, but it may not be exactly the same film that he intended to make. And there's something interesting to me about that concept. It's important for production because we need to be able to break these things down. I need to know how many locations are in my script so I can make them scenes. So remember, locations and scenes are not the same thing because a location could have multiple scenes in it, right? So I need to look at the locations in the script, figure out how many scenes there are to shoot, and then I can start organizing those scenes, figure out what order I need to shoot them in, how many shots. Each scene, then once I break it down to a scene, each scene I'm gonna look at individually and figure out how many shots I need to make this. Do I need one take, one shot to cover it? Is it more of an action scene? So I might need 15 takes to do it, or shots to do it, I'm sorry. There's no right or wrong here. There's no, theoretically, every scene should have 3.57 shots to get it done. Every one of them is different. And this is the beauty of filmmaking. And this is where a good DP and a good director and a good producer will all work together to figure out what the best bang for the buck is and what's the best way to tell the story. So I might just say, well, you know what? For me, I'm always going to have 20 shots in every one of my scenes, but my budget may not call for that. I might not have the money for that. So maybe some scenes I will put that are more important than others. I'll have more shots in, more shots and takes in. Other scenes may not be that important. Maybe I'll make 1 or 2 shots and that's it. And being a good filmmaker, you know exactly what you need and don't need to get the scene complete.